Tired of new watch pricing that puts many brands out of reach? Hate wait lists but don't want to pay over MSRP on the secondary market? Stop dreaming about your next watch and start bidding at Jones & Horn Horological Auctions. They have helped collectors score legendary watch brands at obtainable prices for over 40 years. Their spring featured auction includes watches from brands like Rolex, Omega, Breitling, and more. There's an incredible selection of models for any budget, whether you're a new collector or seasoned enthusiast searching for your next grail piece. Visit jones-horn.com to place your bids now through May 28th. Unlike other auction houses, there's never a buyer's premium added to your wristwatch, pocket watch, coin, or jewelry purchase from Jones & Horn. And no reserves means that it's still possible to snag a deal without worrying about condition or originality. All of that is in the description for every individual lot. The spring featured auction ends with live bidding on May 28th. Buy where the dealers buy. Head to jones-horn.com to register and bid today.
Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the editorial director at Worn and Wound. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Worn and Wound podcast today. I'm joined today, I have two guests. I'm joined today by Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn and Wound. Zach, how's it going?
Going well.
Great. Good to see you. I'm also joined by Cait Bazemore, Worn and Wound contributor. Welcome back to the podcast, Cait. How are you doing today?
It's good to be here again. I'm honestly, for the week, I can't complain.
Okay. Well, it's only Monday. So, there's, I'm thinking back to last Monday. And if we only knew what was in store for us for the remainder of the week, things might have been different. We're talking about today's topic. We're going to devote most of the episode today to the latest collaboration between Swatch and another brand. They've collaborated with Audemars Piguet on the Royal Pomp. A collaboration that we talked about, Garrett and I, on last week's podcast, literally minutes before that collaboration was fully revealed. So there's a lot of funny speculation as to what that might have come if we had only known. Again, there's a lot of sliding doors moments on last week's podcast. So go back and listen to that if you haven't, and you want to hear us, wildly speculate, get some things right and get some things wrong. There's a lot to talk about with respect to this release. Touches on a lot of different things. We'll get to all that shortly. But first, we'll do a quick wrist check, as we always do. Zach, what are you wearing today?
Today, I have on my Breguet Tradition 7037.
Okay. That's a nice watch. Is Breguet the next brand that Swatch will collaborate with, or has this scared them off of the high-end collabs?
Who knows? I don't think Breguet demands the cultural attention quite as much as AP does. I don't know if there's any big celebrities rocking Breguets these days, though there should be.
There should be.
Nice watches.
Yeah.
But people did put up renders of the most recent, the one that won the GPHC last year, the subscription watch with the single hand, made up. It actually looked really nice. It's just a simple, just a version of a Swatch with one hand and a Breguet, a classic looking Breguet numeral dial. It was actually a very nice looking watch.
Yeah,
not mad about that.
You have to send me a link to that render, please. I'm always curious to see sometimes the fan ideas, the enthusiast ideas, they beat what actually comes out. I would be curious to see what a Breguet Swatch collab would look like. As I said last week, I would be really curious to see what a Swatch Harry Winston collab would look like. That's the Swatch Group brand I'm really curious about. I think is most ill-suited, but also best suited to one of these collabs. Maybe we'll see if that ever. Exactly. Yeah. Give me the bioceramic opus, please. Cait, what are you wearing today?
Okay. Before I answer that question, I'm going to throw out a crazy one there, which is the Rien de Naples times Swatch for the ladies.
That would be, yeah. Okay. That's another one.
That would be cool.
Just saying. Cool. So I think for the first podcast appearance that I've been on, which I've been on a few, I'm actually wearing a watch today.
Thank you. Thank you for playing into the bit. We appreciate that.
Very bad. I don't love a watch with typing. Sorry.
Yeah, understandable.
Today, I'm wearing a little Zodiac Super Seawolf that I just really thought perfectly matched this Green Day shirt. So I had
Very
to.
nice.
I had to.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Zodiac's a great brand. They've been in the news a lot, recently because of some, their parent company, Fossil, of course, has had kind of a rough time. And there was there was a couple weeks where I saw a lot of Instagram clips and YouTube clips of Zodiacs turning up in like TJ Maxx and places like that. But like the watches themselves, pretty solid, and I still enjoy those Zodiacs.
I know, I like them. I have a couple of them.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the royal pop. I guess the way I'd like to kind of like start this conversation is just like getting a temperature check on your like relationship to this type of product, just sort of like broadly. So like the Moon Watch has been with us for, it's been like 5 years now that we've been living with the Moon Swatch at this
point or so.
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime sometimes. But I'm kind of just curious to hear your thoughts on like, your existing relationship with the Moon Swatch and Swatch more broadly, and also AP, because I think that sort of like informs how we think about the royal pop. So Zach, I remember when the Moon Swatch came out, you and Blake Mallon, tried to obtain one, very early on release day. And you've talked about that, several times. And I feel like that's sort of like your experience that day, like maybe like informs, your opinion still to this day.
Yeah.
Like tell me about your relationship to the Moon Swatch.
Sure. I mean, we were excited by the concept of the launch. Never were haters on the idea of the Speedmaster being made an affordable timepiece. The whole, whatever. It's a part of the conversation we can have later, but whether or not these actually devalue luxury brands and names, especially considering 4 years later, it seems like the Speedmaster still exists and doing fine. But we were very into the idea because we love democratization of, watches, and the idea of putting a Speedmaster on everyone's wrist was really cool. We just did not expect the hype. I don't think anyone quite did what was sort of brewing in the background in terms of valuations and things like that. So like we were on the train together, and like I remember passing, it must have been like 4th and 9th. We must have been like on the F. I'm just thinking, because I know we were above ground and we're looking and we started seeing all these like images from lines. And like it was early in the day, but we were like, we probably would have gotten there 15 minutes before the store opened or something like that. And we're like, oh no, like I'm not doing this. There's no way in hell I'm doing this. And clearly like people, like we would have never even gotten them anyway. But like I won't wait online in the city for like anything. That's just not. Yeah, I'm against that personally. Yeah. I say that Wind Up has lines. Wait online at Wind Up. But like
that's a fun.
We just got off the train. Yeah, that's all with Washington. It's cool. We got off the train, got breakfast, and that was it. And then I ended up getting one a few weeks later, maybe a couple. I don't even remember the timeline because then we went to Switzerland, and then I ended up getting one for a little over cost or like retail value, I think, on StockX. Yeah, because I wanted to get one into review, and the pricing wasn't like terrible. It was just obnoxious, and then it was overpriced, but it wasn't like thousands of dollars. It was like 100 over or something.
Yeah, I remember those came out like right before Watches and Wonders that year, and that was like the flex piece at Watches and Wonders. Like if you had a Moon Swatch, it was like, it might as well have been a Royal Oak. Like it was sort of like I got this. Like this is, they were like very hard to come by, at that time. Cait, how about you? What is your kind of like overarching sort of like thesis on the Moon Swatch? Like have you owned a Moon Swatch? Like have you ever waited in line for one? And what do you think of these like sort of like the constant iterations of the Moon Swatch that we've seen over the years?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I really echo a lot of Zach's sentiments. Don't own one, would not wait in line for one, would not wait in line for anything, don't love or care about anything that much. So it's this dichotomy for me of like, I think the products are beautiful, particularly when they came out with like the whole like solar system of watches in the different colors for the Moon Swatch. That's right up my alley. I love color. I'm a typical pink girly. Like I would have enjoyed to have the Venus one. But then there's the flip side of this like hype and craziness and elevated pricing, fairly short order in the secondary market, and like all these kind of things that they come to stand for that I take some issue with. So beautiful product, agreed. Like the dumbing down of the brand or diluting of a brand when you're combining, you know, something that's typically higher end and more luxury with something lower end and accessible. And particularly when we're getting into the realm of materials, it's like, I think that argument is silly. I think any collaboration in this industry is a beautiful thing, and helps you kind of reframe and rethink those brands and the other pieces they create themselves. And I think collaborating even within Swatch Group, you know, I think it's worth acknowledging Omega is within Swatch Group. But even within the group, I think something can only be learned and then even just a little nugget taken and informed how you do something else. So again, like I think there are these beautiful things about it. And then I think there are these kind of problematic things about these collaborations, which we can continue to dig into more.
Yeah. So I had like, I remember having like a fairly optimistic view of the Moon Swatch when it was first released. I remember like kind of having a similar thought that Zach had, like, you know, this is good for the democratization of, you know, of watches and, you know, exposing people, giving them a chance to access this luxury brand that was a little less accessible. And, you know, like almost immediately when the Moon Swatch was released, because of the like the flipping and some of the like the activity around the release, which is very similar to what we saw over the weekend with the Royal Pop, just like chaos at the Swatch stores. And then like the constant sort of like almost monthly iterations on the Moon Swatch. Like I became like very tired of it very quickly. I like, if you, you know, I'll leave links to some of my favorite like pieces of Moon Swatch content that I've written over the years. Like I just get progressively more and more like frustrated by it. Like as they get kind of like the releases themselves, I feel like got dumber and dumber, like just like combining different sort of like tropes into like single watches. And to me, it just sort of like became like a money printing machine for Swatch. Like they knew that they would have this like opportunity every couple of months if they wanted to like make a very high margin, you know, product that would, you know, they'd sell, you know, every one that they made, you know, for the first like couple of months, and it would be just like a way for them to, it just felt like a money grab at a certain point. I became very disillusioned by it like pretty quickly. I think like maybe more quickly than some people. I feel like some of the community is sort of like caught up with my cynicism about this thing, you know, to a large extent. But I never owned a Moon Swatch. I do own a Blancpain Swatch Scuba 50, which I kind of impulse bought in Geneva like a few months ago. And I don't know, weirdly with that one, it feels less kind of like weirdly corporate synergistic to me, even though obviously Blancpain is a Swatch Group brand. They don't have the immediate name recognition that Omega does, and the broader sort of like cultural cachet. So like it feels a little bit more insidery, even though it's probably not, you know, in most of the important ways. But I don't know.
I wonder how successful that one was compared with the others. Like, yeah, because Blancpain just isn't a brand like Omega, which has obviously the Moon story and the Olympics and James Bond. I mean, there's so many cultural touch points for it that people would be aware of it. Whereas Blancpain, like, I can't think of any off the top of my head, you know, but of course, if you're in the watch world, it's the first dive watch. There's all that lore about it. And though, yeah, they're expensive watches, not like, I don't meet people every day who are like, the 50 Fathoms is the watch I want the most, kind of a thing. Right. I mean, they're out there and there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, they're cool watches, but it's just not as like, I don't know, hypey, buzzy, things like that. And, you know, and so ultimately that watch, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think it's more of a niche, like.
Yeah. So I wonder though if it was a failure compared in units to the other two. It's certainly like, I don't remember the launch of that one, which I just mentioned in something I was writing, you know.
Yeah, that one, the launch of that watch does not like stick out in my brain the way that the Moon Swatch launch does, and the way that I think the Royal Pop launch will. I think there was definitely interest and speculation around it in the watch enthusiast community because it was kind of like the sequel to the Moon Swatch. But yeah, I mean, my guess is pure speculation, but my guess is that it's not as successful as the as the Moon Swatch. You don't hear about like those scubas like selling out. And
it might just be Swatch's dive watch, kind of like it's just that's just what it is in their collection,
Yeah,
a sport watch system 51.
Yep. They haven't like iterated on it in the same way that that they've iterated on the Moon Swatch, which like they just have never stopped doing.
And one last note on the Moon Swatch for me, because I agree largely. And I was very positive at the beginning, and look at my review; it's super positive.
Mm-hmm.
And the video, I think we made a video for that one, and they're like, this is like content that we also look at and it gets read a lot. It's like a very popular piece of content on the website. Like, if I were to follow that up now, the watch is sitting on on top of my like dresser over there. It's been dead for I don't know how long. There's no strap on it. And like, I'm probably never going to replace the battery on it. I will say, like, after wearing it for a certain point, and maybe this is a little snobby, but given like my watch collection, it just didn't feel as nice as my other watches, and I didn't want to wear it anymore, Yeah. But then, the constant hammering of the limited editions of the boutique model and all this stuff, like it like you said, felt like a cash grab, and it felt the charm just got sucked out of it,
Yeah, for sure. There was like real charm and novelty in that initial release, and it's just amazing like how quickly that all just kind of like dissipated. Zach, I don't know if you remember, we did like a follow up. We did like the initial review of the Moon Swatch, and then which you wrote, and then there was like a group editorial follow up like months later, or maybe like a year later, where we talked about like our reflections on the launch a year later. It'd be interesting to like go back and look at that and see how our like thoughts have changed, because I mean so much has happened like even in the interim between that period and now. All right, so Royal Pop, Cait, what were your kind of like expectations and like thoughts when you initially heard that there was going to be, or that there might be, some sort of collaboration between Swatch and AP? Because you've covered AP for us. Like, you have a relationship with AP, and you have thoughts on the Royal Oak. So what was kind of like going through your mind when you heard the first inklings that there might be something happening between these two brands?
I mean, first, I'm going to preface a lot of my answers today with, I really feel like I'm coming in with a female perspective today, because as a watcher of a lot of reality TV, I'm very like skeptical of like rumors, and especially like hype-based rumors coming out. Like I'm like, I don't believe it until like the official statement has come out. So all to say, like, I'm maybe to an extreme kind of a skeptic. Don't enjoy getting over like speculative about things, but I guess what I can say just simply about these two brands in general is I think the speculation around would these collaborations extend outside of the Swatch family has been a rumbling that I've heard for years of would that happen. Zach, maybe giving you a little credit for your takes on AP and the Royal Oak. It has like become more of a commercialized and pop culture, like that significance of the model has transcended the watch community and like into broader community. And I think just like we've been talking about between like the Omega and the Blancpain, the collab with Swatch, like Blancpain was a little more confusing because that felt more niche to the community, whereas Omega has this reach beyond the watch sphere. It's had many cultural touch points, and in that way, to me, AP feels kind of more aligned, like with the Omega approach. So yeah, I don't know. Those are kind of some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, it seems to me, I completely agree. I think that AP has a much larger kind of cultural footprint than Blancpain, and I don't know that it's necessarily like equal to Omega. It's different. I think that it the two brands kind of like appeal, or have there's an awareness of those two brands that doesn't necessarily like overlap, but they're both like very broad. Zach, what about you? What were your kind of like thoughts when it became clear they were working together? Were you what was your level of concern when you heard that this was happening? What were you hoping for? Was there something that like did you have a sense of like optimism around it in the same? Yeah.
That's so like I think the opposite from Cait. Like I feel allergic to pop culture at this point in my life, and like the news went from like Met Gala nonsense to this and the hantavirus, and I was like, I just want to go away. I want to shut down for a while, and like I just want the news to end. It's too much for me. But the immediate, I don't know, gross speculation about it. It just felt like it was too much too fast with this one. It was just crazy from the get-go, and like everyone had to have an opinion, but it like went well beyond the watch world. It was like everything, so you're just inundated by it. So I was I just found it like irritating, but then I was like, I'm not like a Royal Oak person. Like the way I approach, like I'm much more of a watch person than a brand person, and the Royal Oak has just never been one of the watches that like I've felt like a magnetic pull towards. Nothing against it, just isn't for me. I'm not really an integrated sports watch person. It's kind of true for all of them. So it's like not really a watch like I'm like, oh man, look at this new one, or look at that, or the vintage one, etc. So like the collaboration of that on a personal level, like making that into anything, like cool. It's just not like going to pique my interest specifically. But then like what actually came out, and I'll say, or what actually was revealed, we'll stop at come out. What actually was revealed to me was a more interesting take on what it could have been than I think what people wanted and expected. And that's because we're watch nerds, and like something like a pocket watch, like it speaks more to, watch enthusiasm than maybe like cultural, success would have predicted. But obviously, because of the design and everything, like it was also set up to be accessorized. So it's all, And then there's a launch day, and I'll stop there.
We'll get to the launch day stuff soon. We will definitely spend some time talking about that. So when when it became clear they were collaborating, I was honestly kind of dreading it, because same way I dread like the Moon Swatch, news. I felt like this is going to be, this is hype fueled. Like you, Zach, I'm not a Royal Oak guy at all. I wrote an article probably like a year or so ago now on sort of like the cultural baggage of the Royal Oak and how like kind of played out it is. Like I'm just not into that. It sort of like appeals to all the worst things about like the watch community. It's just become this like pure flex piece in a way that like, I don't know, I just find like really, really unappealing. So like I was not excited by the prospect of a bioceramic, Royal Oak worn on the wrist. So when it was revealed that it was a pocket watch, I was actually like very pleasantly surprised. And I thought, well, this is different and unexpected. Although perhaps like we should have expected it, given some of the like, teaser materials and like the history of the pop Swatch, collection. Like, we probably all should have seen this coming, and some people did, see it coming. But I thought it was like a really clever, my initial impression was this is pretty clever. And it also seemed to be going after a very different audience than like the Moon Swatch did. Like to me, this felt, I don't know, somewhat like less enthusiast focused and more sort of like going towards that like pop culture audience, Cait, that I think you're sort of like speaking about, that is like broadly aware of AP, but not Royal Oak customers, and not necessarily watch enthusiasts either.
I guess part of it for me, why I maybe lean towards like it having more of an enthusiast appeal, is because like, we're the people who actually might buy a pocket watch. Like, I haven't done it yet, but I mean, I've looked at cases at vintage watch, dealers, places. Like I remember Eric Wynn was at a windup, and he had like a Patek pocket watch that was like sub 10K, and it was absolutely stunning. And it's like, I'm not like, I wasn't buying it then, but I could see at some point in my life owning pocket watches because they're beautiful horological things, and they're kind of like ephemera of the like hobby as well. Maybe not ephemera, but like this felt like the ephemera. This felt like, oh, this is a thing that's just like a symbol of being a collector and knowing the brands, and the fact that it's manually wound is like already sort of like niche unto itself. Like I imagine it's really hard to sell a manual wound. Like that's actually, I guess there isn't really a comp for that, but just like if they were to have a manual wound Swatch like at $400, it probably would not sell well. or they'd get a lot of returns because it'd be like, why isn't it working?
I mean, there isn't a and one of the things that's most interesting about this watch to me is that like it's the first manually wound System 51 movement. It's like a genuinely new,
might be the first manually wound Swatch, actually.
Yeah,
they'd be quartz, and then they were automatic in the 90s, and then that's actually interesting. But yeah, I guess though, like going back to like AP a little bit too, it's like, Omega, the Speedmaster is sort of this everyday hero watch, even though the prices have gone up dramatically over the years. Like they were much more in that like obtainable, everyone could have one, and they're it's a tool watch. Whereas like the Royal Oak, once again, and I might be just like missing it, but it's not so like there is no James Bond kind of reference. There's no massive historical event tied to it. It's really that it's like a high-end luxury item and a Veblen good, and like tied to celebrities. Like that is the appeal of it, or like that's at least how the awareness of it gets out.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Cait, that it's sort of like, maybe you can speak a little bit because you're, I think, maybe a little bit more tied into like the pop culture piece than either Zach or myself. Like, where does like the Royal Oak sit in like, pop culture in 2026?
I mean, I think Zach was on the right trail there. Which again, we could argue Omega also does a lot of celebrity placements. Just put that one out there. Yes, I do think that's an interesting distinction to make, that it's not like AP. It doesn't have the tie to the Olympics, doesn't have the tie to James Bond. I think it's, just actors, but entertainers all around. I mean, the number of like song like references to an AP and a Royal Oak, like I think would be a great many. I'm sure there's even someone that's written some kind of tally around that. And I agree too that while something about the Speedmaster presence in pop culture is maybe more just kind of agnostic, like with the Royal Oak, there is a status associated with it, I think, that kind of comes along with those who are culturally wearing the model or aspire to do so. But something else I would like to say is I honestly think that both of the audiences is who this royal pop was for. Because like, I think the argument of pocket watches are so deep watch nerdery, and any normal person, like they may only own one watch, let alone like they're probably not owning a pocket watch. So in that way, I do think for the kind of collector and enthusiast community was in mind with this creation. But if we just sort of like strip away rather the label pocket watch, to me, this is ultimately just like a wearable timepiece. And I think that in terms of more like mainstream, and again, I'm trickling in some like female perspective here of women like wanting to wear a pendant watch, wanting to wear a ring watch, like, wanting to hang a watch on their back. I mean, help but think of like the Labubu hanging on people's bags, and then probably this collaboration is going to be hanging on people's bags in that way. So it's like I can see a world of non-watch enthusiasts like not even necessarily identifying this as a pocket watch per se, as more just like a wearable timekeeper, or really just a wearable accessory, like almost 2 pairs of it.
That will
time.
Probably not be wound.
It's colorful and looks cute.
Yeah.
Do you think there'll be like an Hermes X AP X Swatch like Birkin edition of this? But no, I totally agree, and I did not think about it from that perspective at all at first. And I saw like some pop culture or fashion influencer, I don't even know who, it just came across my feed, and they were talking about it as like the next Labubu, and you could tell from the way they were talking, like watches weren't their thing, like the language they were kind of using, but it was like, and that was very eye-opening to me, because I would have not thought about it like that at all.
Yeah, I think that was like very shrewd of Swatch and AP to kind of like the timing of this, release is interesting. Apparently, it's been in the works for like many, many years, and like predates, Ilaria Rest as the current AP CEO, predates her time. The project predates her like her tenure, so allegedly. So like the fact that it's been released, what are we, like a year or so like removed from like Labubu Mania, where that was kind of like, like kind of taken over pop culture momentarily. Like it's like, I think it's pretty clear that like Swatch and AP figured like, well, this is a thing you can do with this product. And I think it's very smart of them to position it that way. And, and to like get the watch in front of like the right influencers who will position it that way. That might be the more accurate way to kind of like frame this. Cait, once the pocket watch was actually revealed, what were your like initial reactions to it? Were you surprised about what it was? Like, I know you don't like to wait in lines, but did you have a thought like, maybe I will sleep in front of a Swatch store for a night to get one of these?
Yeah, I mean, I really kind of stand by my opening statements of like, well, again, first of all, I was something interesting to me about this launch that wasn't as pervasive when the Moon Swatch was coming out was AI and the number of like AI render. I mean, again, I had to just shut it down. I was like,
it was
I will
insane.
see the real thing when it happens. So when I saw the real, and it was an official statement coming out that this is it. Again, listen, there's this, I would love to have one. Again, they're very me. I would be hanging that thing off of the loop of my jeans. I would be putting it on my handbag. I'd be turning it into a necklace. Like, I couldn't decide which color I like. I like that you can mix and match, like, the case, like with different ropes and interchange the colors. Also, again, very smart from a marketing perspective of, you don't just need one of these, you need more than one of these. Again, product, great. Don't want one bad enough to stand in a line. Don't want one enough to pay thousands of dollars on the secondary market. Don't love everything that's been happening and people getting really ugly and toxic around this. Like, something that was said earlier is, to me, the joy has been stripped out of this. Like, the reason that, not the reason, but one of the primary reasons that we enjoy collecting watches is exactly that: enjoyment, joy. And when all this other craziness and legitimate physical fighting and police and absolute madness starts ensuing, like, the joy is gone. So how can we even appreciate this beautiful product and enjoy it when it's being overshadowed by just madness?
Chaos. Yeah. So let's talk about the release day. So we're recording this podcast on Monday the 18th, and the Royal Pop was scheduled to go on sale on Saturday the 16th, and it did in some places, but in many Swatch stores across the United States and other countries across the world, the release had to be cut short or delayed entirely because of massive crowds, uncontrollable crowds, according to reports, and some just like chaos and some violence. It was described as like a mosh pit sort of like environment by some, as people
Have they
sort
ever
of
been
like
to a mosh pit?
Probably not. I was going to ask you, Zach, if any of this, if any of this,
a lot more motion in a
them.
mosh pit. It's more, this seems more of a crowd press situation.
Yeah. So it was just like a completely chaotic and I think probably like predictable, day of like insanity when this watch was released. Zach, what do you make of the sort of like tenor around like release day on Saturday? You've written about it, and we'll have an editorial on it that we'll link to by the time this podcast comes out. But just sort of like, what are your thoughts on like the day of rollout of this product?
I mean, it was dreadful. It's like you didn't want to see that at all. I figured, given the lines for so long, there'd be disappointment. They were obviously going to run out at some point, but like that there would be violence and, shutting down of stores and police involved. And there's even like some video, it's all, I don't trust anything I see on the internet anymore, but videos of like pepper spray being sprayed and like it got really, really out of hand in some places, way more so than the Moon Swatch did, which there was some around the Moon Swatch. And then it made me remember the Moon Swatch because I don't know, I just wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about that launch. And like, you can play naivety with that launch because they hadn't done it before. They didn't know how popular it was going to be. And so what happened was what happened. This time it was entirely intentional. And like, I don't want to say they intended for there to be violence, but they intended for there to be insane crowds. They intended for there to be spectacle. They intended for it to be a news moment. And yeah, to me, that entirely taints the product. And I feel like from like a little bit of just, teenage punk sort of protest moments, like I don't want to buy one ever now as like my look, this represented the wrong thing in the end, and it takes away from the product.
Yeah. Cait, you're nodding your head in agreement. Do you co-sign on the...
agree wholeheartedly. And honestly, I reached that point with the Moon Swatch too. It's why I never, like I said, I love it. Would have loved to have had one, but I was like, on principle, this is not what I want to be walking around and standing for. And that's exactly how I feel about this too. And like I said, it makes me sad because I do enjoy the product itself. And I think, it's like, to some degree, like, I do agree with you, Zach, where it's like the first time there could kind of be this pass of like, we didn't know how people were going to respond. But this time, and kind of arguably with this feeling more hyped and more loaded leading up, it's like we knew what was going to happen the day that these stores open. I'm also a person that worked retail for many years, and like I genuinely feel for those people like working in the store. Like, that's again like kind of a dangerous and like reckless like situation to be putting anyone in. And it's just like, hope like the brands can see that it's like, okay, like you thought you were creating this like pinnacle moment, but like again, like you've actually taken away from the incredible product that you've taken that you've made rather than adding to it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. It's kind of like beyond belief that they screwed it up so badly, given their like, given the history, and like this is like very similar to what happened with the Moon Swatch roll. Like there were Swatch stores that had to like shut down on the day of the Moon Swatch launch, and like someone even made a joke that like, they're just reusing those signs from like 4 years ago, like on Swatch stores.
Closed.
Yeah. So it seems like entirely preventable. I tend to agree with both of you guys that it was like the hype was kind of the point. I don't think that they of course I don't think Swatch wanted there to be violence. I don't think they wanted people to get hurt or for there to be like arrests or whatever. I don't even know if there were arrests, but like they didn't want that, but they wanted to like create a scene at some point. And when you create a scene, like you run the risk of that scene like kind of getting out of control. And there could have been there could have been safeguards like put in place. Like there could have been like more security at like larger stores. There could have been a system where people knew how many watches would be available. Like these are things that like we know. And Zach, like from wind-ups and from like attending shows where there are limited edition drops, like there are ways to kind of like prevent the sort of like chaos that we saw. But they were like Swatch was reveling in this idea that like they were going to have this like massive crowd, and just like they let it get out of hand, I think.
And like like there was an LE launch at Wind Up last year that was pretty popular, and we had to like make a space for a queue inside the building, and then there was sort of like a ticketing system so people who got there but like the scale of that launch is one time, I don't even know, 1/100% of this launch. So like I really think I feel like they knew how big it was going to be in terms of cultural reception. Maybe not quite as big, but like you already got it before the launch. Like the amount of coverage was so high that like it didn't need the the cherry on top, so to speak, of this like massive insane launch. And frankly, they're lucky that there wasn't any actual, like I haven't heard of anyone really being hurt or really being arrested or a store window being broken or anything like that. Like they seem lucky. It feels like it was on the cusp of that this time. And yeah, I think ultimately, like, I don't even know if there's a way to do this in person. Like, they should have just had 100,000 units available or whatever it is, and an online lottery, and you wait online, and everyone has this equal chance. And yeah, there's bots, and that's up to them to figure out. They're big companies that can have good software for this stuff. Like, everyone needs to have an equal chance on this, because even the camping out thing, like, that is so extreme to even let it happen one night over. It's like it's a very specific type of personality that's even going to do that. I mean, they suffered to do that. People were like, I didn't go to the bathroom for a day. I didn't eat. It's like, that's horrible.
I mean,
do that.
I know. I have things to say about that too, but
well, let's talk about that, because I mean, I also have things to say. Like, to me, that, particularly in 2026 in the economic environment that we are in, the campers, the people who are willing to wait for a week on the streets, is like a particularly sad commentary. And to me, that's just like those are flippers, like those are people who like are in a position where they are willing to kind of like put their lives on hold for 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, whatever it is, to make a few $1,000s on flipping a plastic pocket watch. Like, that's genuinely kind of like an upsetting thought, I think. And like, it doesn't reflect well on, the kind of like where it doesn't reflect well on anything. Like, it's bad. It's sort of like, Zach, we were having a conversation offline. It's just like, it's like late stage capitalism kind of like in one watch drop, and it's like, it's upsetting. I do think that like, some sort of like online model like makes more sense. Cait, what are your thoughts on the sidewalk crowd that was just kind of like out there for a week?
Yeah, I mean, and it's exemplified through the sidewalk crowd, but it's exemplified in other ways as well, that idea of this being, as Zach so perfectly stated earlier, the democratization of watches, and taking something from a brand that from a pure dollar value perspective is very inaccessible to most people, meaning AP, and bringing it down to this more accessibly priced 3-figure piece. That to me is another thing that just gets completely stripped away by all of this, because in fact, this is still just luxury gatekeeping in a different form. It's maybe not by a price tag, even with what these are selling in the secondary market. It's not like they're tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars like a Royal Oak might be, but it's like, yes, like, at what cost to get one of these? How deeply do you have to like degrade yourself to go like live on the street for a few days? And like, it's just like, this to me is just almost like a sneakier form of hierarchy and the problematic like luxury and gatekeeping and fractured part of this industry, where it's like, again, like, okay, so another pillar that you are standing on with this is that this is this like cool, accessible price point thing. It's like, okay, just because the price of the object is low, like, what are the other costs associated with this?
Yeah. And I didn't even think about it, like, from that perspective. Like, I mean, like, I can only be so mad at flippers when there is a market for it, right? And this is how they make money, and they're doing this because of various other reasons. And in this instance, right, the watch, we were probably limited, I imagine, if you could even get there, to one or something per purchase, and then they were maybe being valued at like 4K the day of. So it's not even like that huge of a score for like that many days of suffering on the street for it, right? It's not like this, it's not an amazing return. I mean, percentage wise, I guess it's good, but if eBay and StockX and Chrono24 and all these other marketplaces said, we won't sell it for the first 6 months, or you can't host it, like, would it have just shut down that market? And also, if like the jerks who are out there who are like, I don't want to wait online, I'm going to pay 4K for it. Like, if they like, there is this hierarchy thing, because it's just that, like you said, like, I don't care about the $4,000. I'll pay whatever, and someone else can suffer. It really does start to feel that way. And that is really icky,
Yeah. It kind of like, it's weird how, I mean, we started the conversation, we have returned to this idea of like, the, like, these these collaborations are supposed to kind of like, you know, as we've said, like democratize, you know, the watch space and like, and bring joy to like the collecting community. But like really what they've done over time is like, they've exposed this like very seedy, kind of unseemly like aspect to it. I think, you know, like to be fair and charitable, like while also bringing people some joy and happiness. Like there are people who like, you know, really love their moon swatches and, you know, really, I'm sure will love their Royal Pops once they get their hands on them. But like, it doesn't take long to you know, to like do a little bit of like digging underneath the surface and realizing that like, you know, it's not all, like it's not all positive. Like they're like, it's exposing things that are structurally not very sound, you know, like within the community. So it's, yeah. Problematic in a lot of ways. I wanted to just like kind of quickly touch on this idea of like a lot of people in the lead up to the Royal Pop launch were concerned about devaluing AP as a brand, you know, with a plastic launch of some kind. And we heard this, you know, as we've spoken about in the, you know, lead up to and post the Moon Swatch release as well. And I think that, you know, all signs point to that like not being the case. Is there like a better case to be made that this might devalue AP in some way? I'll tell you, like my take is that like AP is already kind of like devaluing itself in a way, you know, over these last few years, just kind of like the way that they've centered the Royal Oak into like everything that they do, like in terms of like the raw financials, it might not be devalued, but culturally, you know, within the watch community, I think that like their stock has fallen a little bit. I don't know that this release really moves the needle one way or another. I think that if it had gone really well, it could actually maybe like improve their, you know, their stock, so to speak, within the watch community. They were going to donate, you know, or planning still to donate, you know, all the profits from this release to a, I don't remember the exact cause, but it's an organization that promotes watchmaking education and independent, you know, watchmaking, I believe of some kind. We'll link to that story in the show notes. But I guess I'm just curious.
How
like,
lost was that in this? I mean,
very
that's
lost.
amazing.
Yeah. So that like, yeah, that's something that is like not.
Well, again,
not being reported
hello,
on
you buried the cool, important thing because it was overshadowed by all of this other insanity.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Just like before we close out the conversation, your guys' thoughts on the kind of like the idea of like that this would devalue AP as a brand. Is that something they should be concerned about, or did they mitigate that by making it a pocket watch and not something worn on the wrist?
I think at this point, like the launch might have devalued them a little bit.
I think so too.
I don't think the product would have. You know, I saw, you know, badly drawn AI memes and whatever, people being like, "Oh, nice $70,000 watch. I got it for $500." Like, if you're so like fragile that you would think your Royal Oak that you paid whatever 5 figures for is threatened by the few $100 version of it, like you just have problems, you know, and you need to deal with them. But like, I don't think that would actually hurt the brand at all. And in fact, like there's, you know, it's the same with Speed. There's so many people who will never be able to get those watches. And even at a few $100, this is, you know, a luxury for many. And like, but if it gives you a little bit of that, of a taste of that, you know, and like, there's something nice about that. Right. And I feel like that's what it just should have been, you know? It was never a threat to the high-end collectors. Yeah.
Well, I mean, tell that to the to the guys who bought their Royal Oak at twice retail or 3 times retail at the height of the crazy market. They were not happy with the prospect of a plastic Royal Oak coming. But to them, I say, who cares? Because I mean, lots of silly things happening in that with that crowd. Cait, what are your thoughts on the kind of like so-called devaluation of AP as a brand as a result of this launch?
Yeah, I mean, this is all kind of coming to me in real time because you know that I try to go to war with you a little bit over your thoughts on the Royal Oak in general. And what is coming to me in this moment is, listen, AP has doubled down time and time again on something that is a commercial success and, you know, or that if nothing else has commercial value to it. And maybe that's what's happening again with this. And you could say that investing in pieces of commercial value dumbs down the like integrity, beneath it or something. But I think on the flip side, we have the overshadowed piece of this launch where the proceeds are going towards a worthy outlet for the support of future watchmakers. And I'm also thinking about what AP launched at Watches and Wonders this year, which is a whole kind of niche celebration, again, of artistry, of handwork, of craft, of craftspeople, literally like naming them all, like the credits of a film at the bottom. So what's coming to me in this moment is like, if AP wants to have two speeds and they want to have more like commercial verticals and those are the money makers and they're running a business, cool. I think let's not forget that they do have a side that remains rooted in the art of watchmaking and they have real chops and history to kind of back that up. So maybe those two different speeds are confusing to people. I'm just kind of synthesizing this in my own mind. Maybe it's confusing to me too, the more I think about it. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my closing take.
Well, I mean, I fully admit to being a bit of a hater, as they say, when it comes to AP and the Royal Oak. But like this, taking the release day chaos aside, I think that like this was a pretty good move for them, from a branding standpoint. And I don't know if time will tell like how well they've protected the brand. I agree with you, Zach, that like the Royal Oak, commercially is like not in trouble, because of this release. But like, I don't know. I felt like a little, I felt like a more drawn to AP, in the like immediate aftermath of this release, because they're trying something different that's accessible and that, putting the money towards a worthy cause, I thought was a noble thing. It's too bad that that's all kind of marred, at least temporarily and probably for a little while in our community by like the way that the release went. It's also kind of ironic, considering, Swatch handled the logistics of the release. Everything was sold at Swatch stores like AP, boutiques, and had nothing to do with this. You couldn't buy this watch at AP. It's a little ironic considering how tightly controlled the market for APs is by AP themselves. That's like kind of like what they've become like really, really expert at over these last several years, as Royal Oak Mania has sort of like, taken hold. Like they control every single Royal Oak sale as much as they possibly can. So there's a bit of irony in the way that this sort of like became a fiasco. Yeah. What a week it's been. Zach, any final thoughts on the Royal Pop? Are you just even more? Are you even more exhausted by it than you thought you could imagine?
No, I mean, I'm glad we're doing this now. I feel like
the postmortem.
It's a little bit of, we all need to vent on it. And I feel like that is sort of the content now that's coming out, is the like built up, like, I don't know, response to this thing that happened. And, as people who care deeply about watches and the watch industry and watch culture, like it's frustrating to see this, and we need to I need to let it off my chest that this was, not okay. And that's going to be the content this week. I'm sorry to everyone who's sick of Royal Pop content. There's probably a little more coming, but yeah, it's over. It's done. I'm curious if there will be any kind of damage control from AP and Swatch, and how they'll move forward with the release, and frankly what they'll do with it down the line, like if this is going to be a continual thing or not, or but yeah, I mean, I think I said before, it's like, I don't know, unless there's a really good what do you call it, like an apology, but like more than an apology, like I think I will
an acknowledgement of the
yeah, owning it, taking responsibility for it, I guess, is really the most important thing. Unless that happens, I think that this is not something that I will have collecting dust on my shelf in 4 years.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't really, the whole thing has just kind of like turned me off of the product. I still kind of think, I could think it's cool. Like, in an ideal world, like I kind of want that black and white one like on my desk. But I agree. I think that.
I like the Arizona iced tea one.
Yeah, that one's cool too. I mean, they all kind of have their merits. Like, I don't think that there's like a bad one, you know, like they all kind of like have their charm. But yeah, it'd be nice if Swatch could like acknowledge, you know, some responsibility for the, you know, a very, you know, a rollout that really left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I would pick one of these up in the Geneva airport, you know, in a year or so if I saw one and there was a little bit of accountability for this rollout. But I think we'll leave it there. Zach, Cait, thank you so much for coming on the pod, talking all things Royal Pop. Of course, we want to know what you, the listener, think of the Royal Pop, the release shenanigans, or anything else on your mind regarding this collaboration or any other from Swatch and their Swatch Group brands and non-Swatch Group counterparts. So leave us a note in the usual places if you have any thoughts on that. And we will see you next time on the Warner Wound podcast. Until then, take care.